أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وبه نستعين. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، إلها واحدا أحدا فردا صمدا، لم يتخذ صاحبة ولا ولدا. هو الله الذي لا إله إلا هو، عالم الغيب والشهادة، هو الرحمن الرحيم. والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا وشفيع قلوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا، رحمة للعالمين، أبو القاسم محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد.
اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وآل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. يا من اسمه دواء وذكره شفاء وطاعته غناء، يا حي يا قيوم يا من لا إله إلا أنت. أما بعد, respected brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has granted us this blessing and this opportunity to gather on the day of Jum'ah, the day of gathering and the day of bringing together. The human being is tasked with bringing together the inner and the outer. When we stand in prayer, in our daily prayers, when we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when we make dua, we are in fact conveying to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala two things. These two things incorporate the inner and the outer aspects of our lives. The human being consists of and is composed of a spirit and a bodily, earthly component, the body and all of its various attachments. The human being, throughout the process of this journey of life, that journey which is both very long and very short. It's very long because our perception of time is very subjective, and our understanding of the realities of this world are very limited. And it is short because when we, in fact, think about the way that life carries forward, the way that we have experienced the days and the nights, we soon realize that the way that we have counted and measured a long life is in fact very short. The way that someone goes through, the way that someone goes through the days and the nights and the weeks and the months and the years and the decades of life, when someone is on their deathbed, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect all of you and grant you a life that is both long, but is filled with discernment and joy and the tawfiq of basira. When someone is about to pass from this temporal phase of our existence, this temporal abode, onto the next, and if you were to ask them, did you live a long life? You will not find someone who says, yes, I lived a very long life and it's time for me to go. Everyone wishes that I had another day, another week, another month, another year, and so forth. Especially when someone faces some type of physical ailment, some type of challenge. Everyone who's around them, they are willing to do anything for them to stay with them, right? If it's offering, if it's looking for a particular organ, if it's, for example, speaking to some specialist about a new procedure, a new drug or something, a new treatment, everyone's willing to do whatever they can. People are willing to take on exorbitant loans in order to support their loved one for another time. All of these various things. All of it is to say, dear beloveds, is that life is not as long as we actually think it is, although we think it's very long. In fact, it's very short. It's very much ephemeral and passing and fleeting. Now, this leaves the individual, I said, with a responsibility, an inner and the outer responsibility. The outer responsibility is that we must maintain what is referred to in the sense of political science and the context of law and formations of societies and other things, it's referred to as a social contract. The members of society agree willingly, right, either implicitly or explicitly, that they're going to engage in behaviors and be present in a system that ensures as much as possible a stable social order, a way that we as human beings can move forward in our day-to-day activities without the constant uncertainty or threat of violence, of an order, of a system of laws, of rules, of regulations, right? And the human being, in order to be in such a contract, if we use that term for a while, if they are to be in such a contract, there are a number of terms that are included. One of them is language. Language in itself has a particular implicit and explicit understanding. In the context of the philosophy of language, we come to an agreement that there are certain things that are in fact true, right? If in the context of language, we do not have the presence of accepted truths, language can't really function. If I were to see one of you, we are to engage in a conversation, even if it were to be brief, the words that you and I use, we both agree that those words mean something. If I were to stop you, or if you were to stop me and say, well, what do you mean by this word? What do you mean by this word? I don't actually accept what this word means. We can't really have a conversation. And if we pause for a moment and look at it, one of the main problems that we have in society today, especially in the context of the United States, we see in the last number of years that there has been a gradual but very calculated move away from what things mean in reality. Things no longer mean, according to some, what they visibly and objectively are, right? This whole term of false news or different truths or different interpretations and other things, but these are some things that people accept. Now, how can, and we talk about why are we so distant? Why is there so much conflict? Why there's so much tensions and other things? Because we have individuals who no longer accept the very basic definitions and aspects of what a conversation is and what words mean anymore. Truth no longer means truth. Evidence no longer means evidence, right? All of these various things vary, right? Laws and rules and all of these various things, they change based on what I think, based on what's convenient, based on political considerations and so forth. But in the context of Islam, the context of religion, one of the main things that we are told and called towards is maintaining the truthfulness of what we are saying. This is very important. Maintaining the truthfulness of what we're saying. The maintenance of the truthfulness of what we're saying is both in relation to our understanding and worship and maintenance of divine law, how we worship God, how we make supplications, how we stand in prayer, but also in the context of how we behave with one another as human beings. Right? One of the most condemned things in the Quran and in Islamic law is false testimony. False testimony. Accusations. These are things that are, if we pause for a moment, but we all agree that accusation is bad, but it actually goes back to something very important. It goes back to language. That's what I'm trying to offer. Accusation is based on language. It's a deviance. It's a shift away from the requirements of truthfulness and safety in language, right? And safety is very important. Look, there's one view that says that one of the reasons why salam is important and the way that Muslims engage with one another, it's a universal thing, right? Wherever you are in the Muslim world, you meet another Muslim and you say, Salaam alaikum, wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Everyone understands it. It's a very beautiful thing. It's a very profound thing. You do not have very many instances where you can use a term that's actually specific to one language. And anywhere in the world, whether someone speaks that language or not, if they are Muslim, they understand it. Other religions don't really have that, right? For example, even if you use the term namaste, which is very common now, especially with the proliferation of Eastern traditions in the Western world, that really took off as a way of the 60s anti-war movements and other things. You don't have that same type of application, but assalamu alaikum does. Now, one of the views, one of the theories in this is that the Arabs prior to Islam, because of the constant tensions that were taking place between them, when they were to come across various other groups and tribes and various other peoples, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, that there was a threat of violence that takes place. When you say Assalamu alaikum, you're conveying to the other person that I actually do not have an intention for any type of conflict or violence. You see? And the word here, when you're exchanging the greeting of salam with someone, is actually this guarantee of safety. It's a guarantee of safety. When you say Assalamu alaikum, you're really conveying to the other person that you are safe with me. We don't think about this usually, but we're actually telling them that you're safe with me. Now imagine if you are in a land, if you are in a place, if you are and you're looking for something, you're lost, you need something. If someone comes and says to you, Assalamu alaikum, brother, Assalamu alaikum, sister, what do you automatically think? You automatically think that this person is Muslim. Nowadays, alhamdulillah, everybody knows Assalamu alaikum. Sometimes you're walking around Oakland and someone randomly says Assalamu alaikum, So that's a good thing. But what you're being told is that there's safety and trust there. Your behavior begins to change, right? And this happened to me recently. This happened to me. There was an issue at the house and I needed some service. So I reached out to a service provider. And people use various names. You can't really tell if someone's Muslim or not. When they came to the house and they said, "Oh, are you Muslim?" And I said, "Yes." I said, "Salaam alaikum, I'm from this country," right? Automatically, something changed and shifted, right? So what I'm saying is that language requires a particular safety. When there's accusations, when there's untruths being said, when there are lies being said, when there is the absence of truthfulness in language becomes an issue. It becomes a problem. But language has been granted to the human being. The sophistication and the complexity of language that you and I have is really one of the great signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions this in the Quran, that from amongst the signs of God is the variance of your tongues. The differences in your tongues is a sign of God, right? And each tongue at its most eloquent, we have bayan, we have balagha, we have all of these various sciences in language. Balagha and bayan and all of these arts really come down to conveying truth in the most clearest manner, in the most refined way, in the most beautiful way, in the most poetic and eloquent way, right? And if you go back to it, all of these things refer back to truth. These are all connected, right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has this insistence that the human being, that the Muslim like you and I, we must maintain this truthfulness, not only in relation to how we are speaking to God, but also how we are speaking to one another. In that, what's really important is, I started this conversation, this reflection for this Jum'ah by stating that there has to be an agreement between the inner and the outer. Has to be an agreement between the inner and the outer. Now, why do I mention this? I mention this to go back to the conversation we've been having the last number of weeks that I've had the honor of being present here. And that is that this religion calls us towards akhlaq. And akhlaq is really an attempt to make sure that the outer aspect of how we are, how we appear, how we behave, how we navigate and move through society and these social constructs are informed and spring from an inner state that is actually truthful, that is actually poetic, that is actually beautiful, that is actually mindful and aware that God sees all. God knows all. And we have a responsibility. This responsibility says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Bismillah ar-Rahman, Wallahu alimun bidhati sudur. God is intimately knowledgeable, deeply aware of what is in the very core of your hearts and beings. Wallahu alimun bidhati sudur. Your very essence, my very essence, is what God knows. I don't have to disclose it. We don't have to disclose. God already knows it. But why is it then that we are told to pray, to make dua, to supplicate? God already knows these things. It's an attempt, I would offer. It's an attempt to ensure that there's actually change and progress being made. Right? When we're asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for aid and for assistance, for guidance, for nur, it's a very beautiful dua of Imam Sajjad, salamullah alayhi, where he says, Ya Allah, make the nur of my heart such that it encompasses my entire being. The nur, remember, if you imagine a center, the heart being the center, right? And if it radiates and engulfs your entire being, you visualize what type of individual that is. You visualize what type of life we're able to lead. Versus a heart that is very dim. Right? Imagine a house that is lit. Imagine a sky. We were speaking with someone who spent 2 months. They spent 2 months in the desert. 2 months in the desert to learn how to read the stars. You know, in the past, I've mentioned this before, this is actually a very shocking thing that we don't think about. I often forget to think about this. This life, this era that we're living in, right? This period of human existence in the Western world is one of the it's the only time that we know of in human history up until this point where human beings can walk outside, can be outside and not see the stars. You can't see the stars because of light pollution, because there's so much artificial light around us, right? So if you go out, you know, here in the beautiful state of California and Northern California, if you go to places, for example, a bit outside, you go to areas like Placerville, or you go camping, you go to these national forests and parks, right? One of the beautiful things that is very awe-inspiring and beautiful is that at nighttime, you look up and the sky is filled with stars. You go to places like Joshua Tree, it's beautiful at night, right? These are all signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For us, it's a treat, and it really is a treat. But for generations upon generations of human beings, and still in some parts of the world, this is a natural, everyday thing. Now imagine how artificiality confuses things. We look at artificial light and we say, well, this is light. But it actually prevents and obscures true light, the light of the stars in this case, right? Now there's also artificiality and sort of the absence of reality in the way that our behaviors work. You ever heard of the term someone who's fake? They're friendly, but they're fake. Right? They're generous, but they're fake. They want to help you, but they're fake. They're after something. This is artificiality. And it's not even, remember, what I'm trying to say, and I hope this is connecting, inshallah. What I'm trying to say is that these actions go back to language. They go back to language because language, whether it's intention that has its own unspoken language, or it's actually through words, all of these go back to whether there is actually truth or there isn't truth. And if there is truth, there is safety and trust that can be established. There's safety and trust that can be established. But if there's not truth, that safety and trust is removed in a relationship, in a society, in a community in which safety and trust of language is removed. Well, there's damage that's taken place. There's deep ruptures. There's separation that takes place. So all of these other social ills and social problems that appear, they go back to language. Xenophobia and racism and all of these things go back to language. The terms that we use that are harmful to others, they go back to language. Language in its terms generates particular images and assumptions and accusations around particular groups. And then those things are maintained and referred back through language, right? Violence when it comes through the context of economies, violence and lies that comes through political systems. right? Political groups that lie, political parties that lie, political leaders that lie. Trust is removed from society, let alone when you come into the realm of religion. If religious leaders and religious speakers are stating words that are not truthful, trust in religion becomes eroded. Religion is supposed to be a site of safety and security and trust. If someone says, I'm religious, and then they commit acts which are harmful to others, it removes that individual's ability to trust religion, not just that person. Religion becomes at stake and at issue, right? This is important. This is important. Now, I mention this because when it comes to dua, when it comes to supplication, what is needed from us is truthfulness. Truthfulness. The best dua is a dua that is rooted in truth. Look at all of the ad'iyah, all of the du'as in the Quran. Du'as that are asking for forgiveness. Du'as that are asking and conveying gratitude. Du'as that are asking for safety, for salvation. Du'as that are for the self, for family, for others. All of them they include one very important thing, which is that the sayer of the dua, whether an individual or a group or a prophet or just a regular individual, it's rooted in a truthfulness. They really believe it. You look at some of the very du'as, the du'a of Sayyidina Hazrat Ibrahim sallallahu alayhi, Bibi Hawa, the du'a that they engage with after being taken out of that garden, it's in truth. The du'a of Prophet Musa sallallahu alayhi, right? The dua, all of these various du'as, they are rooted in truth. What I mean by truth is that they are stated with full honesty and trust and reliance and conviction that the words that I am saying, I hold them to be true. The one that I am saying them to hears it. The one that I am saying it to has the power to grant them to me and is the only power. That's dua. So our narrations, there's various books on du'as, various books. Some of them are available in English, some of them are not, some of them are in other languages, lots of du'as. But if you look at many of the narrations attributed to the Ahlul Bayt, salamullahi alayhim ajma'een, one of the things that they say about how to approach making du'a is believing that your du'a can be granted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Some people say, I make du'a, it didn't get accepted. Astaghfirullah, there's no such thing. There is no such thing as a dua that's not accepted. It doesn't exist. The possibility and the ability to make dua means that the acceptance of dua is there. These are narrations, these are verses of the Quran. Now, what is granted to you is different, because if there's khayr in it, you're granted that thing that you're asking for. If there's not khayr in it, you're either forgiven of some sins and shortcomings in this world and the hereafter, or you're granted something else later on. And this is very important for us to understand as Muslims. Do not think, we should not think that if I'm making dua, well, then it didn't get accepted. I asked for X, I didn't receive X, wallah, it didn't get accepted. No, you should understand, and we should understand that if we have the gift and the grace and the blessing of making dua, it's accepted. It can only be accepted and granted by God. This type of understanding and this type of trust and safety in dua tells us to constantly be in the act of dua, the state of dua. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for guidance in nur. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to increase us in taqwa. We ask Ya Allah to purify for us our intentions and our speech, our language and our acts. We ask Ya Allah to illuminate and guide us with a sincerity and with an ikhlas that protects us in this world, that saves us from the punishment of the grave, and that gives rise to us as the muhsineen and those who are the true lovers of the Prophet and his Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salatu wassalam. Ya Allah, we ask you for healing and comfort. We ask you for forgiveness and nur. We ask you for knowledge that is beneficial. We ask you for healing to all of those who are sick, forgiveness and safety to all of those who have passed on, and unity for all of us who are present. Ya Allah, give us that which is best. Forgive us that which we have not done and we were called to do, and forgive us that which we had forgotten and we had promised to do. برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوات.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وبه نستعين. ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب. ربنا أتمم لنا نورنا واغفر لنا إنك على كل شيء قدير. رب اغفر لي ولوالدي وللمؤمنين يوم يقوم الحساب. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. يا حي يا قيوم يا من لا إله إلا أنت. والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين. ولعنة الله على أعدائهم من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين. اللهم نرغب إليك في دولة كريمة تعز بها الإسلام وأهله وتذل بها النفاق وأهله. Amma ba'd, respected brothers and sisters, once again, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Alhamdulillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has granted us language and these tongues that can engage in His remembrance and in dua, and has made language a harmonious comfort and a means of guidance and a means of communication and understanding and knowledge and truth for us. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us eloquence and to remove the knots from our hearts and our minds and our tongues, to expand for us our vision, to grant us sincerity and taqwa, to inspire us with His remembrance, to illuminate for us our hearts, and to gather us in compassion and in grace and in kindness and in generosity and in truth and justice as Muslims, inshaAllah, and to count us amongst the Ansar and A'wan of our Imam, Ajjalallahu Ta'ala Farajahu Sharif. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to remove from our inner and outer states all barriers to perfection and all barriers that prevent us from experiencing and achieving the perfection and the kamal and itmam of akhlaq and of iman and of ihsan. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has asked you and I to be truthful in the way that we engage with one another, to be truthful in our reliance upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Being truthful in our reliance upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't mean perfection. You and I as Muslims, you and I as believers are not asked to be perfect. Perfection is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is perfect. Kamil. But you and I have various oscillations and movements and ups and downs and changes and mood swings and the presence or the absence of energy and all of these other things that are very human. We have forgetfulness. That's very human, right? Sometimes this forgetfulness is good. Sometimes this forgetfulness is bad, right? But we're not asked for perfection. Never. We don't have any text, any claim that says be perfect. That's not the case. But what we're asked for is to be sincere in our efforts, to try, right? To work, to make effort. When you make mistakes, to turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to engage in tawbah. This is a very beautiful and comforting and safety granting way of life. Imagine if it was the requirement in this religion that if you make a mistake or if you forgot something, you're hellbound. How much anxiety would you and I have? Now, there are some people who actually want you to believe that this is religion, right? There are some people who want you to say that if you're a female who is standing in prayer and one strand of hair is showing, you're going to be burnt in hell. Can we believe? Can we really believe this? Can we really believe by reading the Quran, by looking at the life of the Prophet ﷺ, by looking at the life of the Aimma, right? By reflecting and deeply thinking about Islam as a system, right? By making dhikr, by making the du'as and supplication and ibadah to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in sincerity, and then conclude that such a thing exists in our religion, I think that's impossible. That one strand of hair being shown means that that person is burning in hell. How can this happen? Right? But there are people who want us to believe this, right? There are people who want us to believe that this religion is really a religion of anger, a religion of violence, a religion of vengeance. Right? There are some people when they talk about Sayyidina Imam Mahdi, ajalallahu ta'ala farajahu sharif, and they say he's coming back to kill everyone. He's coming back to kill everyone, right? The sword is coming and he's going to, he's coming back as hujjah, as proof, as reason, as guidance, right? What do we want to believe? And this all goes back to really one thing. The more and more that I think about Islamic history, the more and more that I think about interpretations, about how we arrive at law, books that are written, khutbahs that are given, all of these, it comes back to one very important thing. How truthful are we in what we're saying? We know for a fact that governments and scholars for hire and others have historically worked to diminish the fada'il and the status of Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali alayhi salatu wasalam. This is a historical fact. It's a historical fact. We know that historically people have attempted to diminish and to remove and to spread lies about the realities of Karbala, right? We know that there are people today who spread lies about various Islamic schools of thought and interpretations that do not agree with their interpretation. And they make people believe that other groups have different Qur'ans, other groups are mushrik, other groups are kafir, other groups are mulhid, all of these various things. And then they come and they say, we worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How? How do you worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when you engage in lies? When you engage in lies. Right? So this religion really comes back to this note of speech, of language, and of truthfulness. And this is important for us as Muslims, both as a spiritual practice, but also as a social contract with one another, as a requirement, as a guarantee that when someone speaks, they speak truthfully. When our religious scholars speak, they speak truthfully. With respect to any issue, when our political leaders speak, they speak truthfully. When we speak, when our merchants and businessmen and women, when they speak truthfully, right? When our buyers, they speak truthfully. When parents and children, when siblings and husband and wife and friends, when all of us as individuals, as human beings, when we speak, we turn to language and use language as a site of safety and security and trust, of truthfulness, of comfort, words of comfort. And these words and this language really holds our inner states, right? That's a very beautiful saying in the maqalat of Shams Tabrizi that says حقیقت انسان را خواهیدان آن را به سخن آر. If you want to know the reality of an individual, listen to them, allow them to speak. Allow the individual to speak. You have people who boast, right? Very boastful. You have people who lie. You have people who misrepresent things. You have people who are angry. You have people who are arrogant. All of this becomes very clearly known through speech. You have people who are impatient. You also have people who are very kind. You have people who are very sincere. You have people who are very gentle, who are reliable. They say something and then they do it. They make promises. They take responsibility when they forget, when they make mistakes. All of this comes back to language. When you look at the political realm in this country and globally, and you look at the problems within the Muslim Ummah, the lies that are being spread by various individuals and movements and governments, I want us to think about speech. I want us to maintain and keep mind of what someone says and then what happens, what they promise and then what they do, what they claim to be and then the exposés that take place. And our requirement and our insistence as Muslims should be that we are a people of truth. We are people that guarantee truth in all aspects of our lives and the way that it's organized. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala during this blessed hour and during this blessed day for guidance and for mood and for truthfulness in our actions and truthfulness in our speech, truthfulness in our intentionalities, truthfulness in our reflections and our interpretations and our perceptions. And Ya Allah, align us to the truth, keep us in the truth, preserve us in the truth, and protect us and perfect us in the truth. Increase us in your love and the love of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his Ahlul Bayt alayhi wassalatu wassalam, and the righteous and the awliya and the mu'mineen. Ya Allah, we ask you for that which is best. Ya Allah, we ask you for forgiveness for all that we have done, especially our worst. Ya Allah, we ask you for guidance and noor and health and protection and increase in our rizq and safety and security for our loved ones, forgiveness for those who have passed on, and healing and comfort for all those who are sick and those who are worried and those who are pained. And we ask you, Ya Allah, for release and justice and comfort and safety and freedom for all of the Muslims and all the people of this world who are oppressed. برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إنا أعطيناك الكوثر فصل لربك وانحر إن شانئك هو الأبتر. صدق الله العلي العظيم.